So, Dr. Umar Johnson blames all black men? Coming right on. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Common Sense, Logic, and Reason. And as always, I want to say thank y'all for joining me today. So, Dr. Umar Johnson had an interview with the Daily Wrap-Up group. Now, when Dr. Umar Johnson gives an interview, you pretty much know what to expect. You know, you're going to get cries of racism and white supremacy and Pan-Africanism. And he's going to talk about his school. But you know you're going to get a whole bunch of race hustle rhetoric, because that's just what race hustlers do. Now, the interview pretty much went as expected until he started blaming black men for all of the problems in the black community. And then it got very heated from that point.
Feminism was financed by the CIA. Gloria, what was her name? Gloria Steinem, I think she was.
Right, yeah.
Mother of modern feminism, because traditional feminism goes back to the 1800s, right? With Susan B. Anthony and those white supremacists. But Gloria Steinem was a CIA agent. They financed her. Her first feminist magazine they paid for. The CIA brought feminism into the white household to get the woman out the house, and into the black household to turn the black woman against the black man.
Now, he gives some truth about the feminist movement. There definitely was a government influence when it comes down to the feminist movement. But the problem with race hustlers is that because they inject race into everything, they never get to a deeper level. They can never get deeper than race. And a feminist movement goes far deeper than race. We talking, globalist New World Order deep. But if all you can see is race, you never get to that level. And the feminist movement was not created to basically pit the black woman against the black man. It was created to basically put women against men in general. So here he is injecting race into everything. He can find race. If he can find race in some way, he's gonna cry about it. It doesn't matter. It could be tomato sauce. It could be a bag of M&Ms. It could be the hard drive in the computer. If he can find racism in a hard drive, he'll be saying these hard drives are racist, keeping a black man down. But it's really stupid. Now, this basically brings me back to the nuclear bomb on New York City analogy, and these race hustlers, they keep making this relevant because they always make everything about race. Now, the analogy goes, let's say that one of our enemies, Russia, China, launch a nuclear missile at New York City, and it kills 10 million people. Now, of the 10 million people, let's say 6 million people die, white people die, 1 million black folks, and 3 million others, Hispanics, Asians, and whatnot. Dr. Umar Johnson will refer to that as the black genocide. And I'm like, wait a minute, so the 6 million white people killed, that wasn't a white genocide. The other people, the Hispanic people killed, that wasn't an Hispanic genocide. It wasn't an Asian genocide. It was a black genocide. That's how stupid these idiots are. And what makes it worse is you got people who listen to that foolishness. But like I said, the feminist movement was not created to attack the black family, the black community. It was designed to attack the communities in general, America in general. That's just him injecting race into the feminist movement.
I have 2 daughters, 11 and 20, right? My oldest would be 21 this week. Statistically, right? There's a strong chance my daughter could be one of those. I hope she's not. She could be one of those who never get a husband, because only 1 out of 4 gets a husband. You see that? So when a black woman says, I don't need a man, that is a reaction to the reality that I may not get a man.
If 1 out of 4 black women will ever get married, the question has to be why? And this is one of my biggest issues with the left, is they always focus on the what, never want to address the how or why. But could it possibly be a reason that only 1 out of 4 black women will ever get married? Especially coming from a situation there was a point in which black people had the highest marriage rates. I don't know, could it be because I know black women are the most combative, have the worst attitudes, the least submissive, just have the most mouth, or the least ready to be wives? And perhaps maybe these black females do the worst job of listening to what black men are saying, what they want. You can't blame black men if black women are not up to par when it comes up to being wives, especially if you got so many black women make themselves out to be whores. And why would you want to marry a woman who's a whore? You don't marry a hood rat. And a lot of these women are being raised to be this way by who? Their mothers. So if you would like to see a better marriage success rate amongst black people, Dr. Umar, then perhaps maybe you should get with these black females and tell them to listen to what the men saying that they want. I mean, men have a voice now that really black men have never had. We have social media now, and all you gotta do is go to the internet, and men are saying all the time what men want. So perhaps if women should listen, and maybe the percentage of black women getting married would go up, perhaps.
Over here, I want to say this to us though, because we try to act like the way sisters treat us doesn't have a history that we are not at least partly responsible for. Let's be honest. The black woman has had to hold down the black house by herself, although imperfectly. She's had to do it by herself since the mass incarceration of black males began in the 1970s. You understand me? Most of our children are raised by a single mother right now. And it has been that way for about 50 years. So when a sister says, I don't need a man, because she couldn't find one strong enough to hold her down.
Okay, if black women are quote unquote holding down this household by themselves, is it possible that's because that's the household that they made by laying up with these Pookies and Ray Rays and having children with men that they knew were not going to be around? Again, 99% of the time, these women know these dudes. I mean, if a guy has 4 kids that he's not taking care of, why are you going to give him a 4th? You're going to give him a 5th, and you think that you're going to be different, that he's going to take care of your child? So women, they sit here and they desire these thugs, and they choose these thugs, and they lay out with them, and then you get upset with the repercussion. Now, as far as men not being strong enough, well, you telling me with all these good black men, they can't find a man who's strong enough? And really, truly, you're going to have to define what do you mean by strong? We're going to define what he means by strong, because if by strong mean I got to be hood, okay, I got to have 4 or 5 bodies or whatever. I mean, I got to be super saiyan thug to be strong enough for you. Then I don't need to be with you, because I'm going to be me, and that's not me. I ain't no thug. I don't push the thug nonsense. And really, the whole thug is not really, it's fake masculinity. Even though it may appear to be real masculinity, but it's fake masculinity, but that's not real. If I don't have to do that. And the thing that really gets me is that all of these good black men out here who supposedly not strong enough to hold down a black woman seems to be strong enough to hold down women of other races. So if it seems to me like we got a problem with the black woman, not the black man. If the black man is strong enough for other women of other races and is desired by women of other races, it can't be the black men. So, and it brings me back to a post that Drummer Boy 1980, and this was he made a post about pepper, of salt and pepper, and how she said that back then Will Smith was too lame for her. And we talking about Will Smith, and not Will Smith, Will M.F. Smith. Okay? And he was too lame for her back then. So who was she trying to get with? Tretch? Thug dudes? Yep. And how we blame men for this. I mean, again, you got all these good men out here, but these women want to mess with the hood dudes, they want to mess with the dudes with the swag. You can't blame good men for that. If I'm presenting you an option, but you chose bad, hey, when you get the repercussions of that bad, that's your fault, not me. I mean, women need to we need to hold women accountable for their bad choices, not sit up here and give them excuses. But like I said, this household that these women hold it on, this is a household that they created. So you create this household, you need to be responsible for it. End of story.
Play a role.
We have to be
in the
held
strong-
accountable for their poor selection.
No, you have to be held accountable. No, you have to be held accountable because they have a poor selection. See, what you're saying, you're selecting a poor mate. And what I'm saying is they don't have much to select one, so of course you're going to end up with a poor mate. And why is she going to end up with a poor mate? Because we as black men are not raising black boys to be the men that our women need.
Now, this is where the good doctor starts to just get absolute asinine in the things that he says. I mean, black men actually do raise sons to be men. The problem is that it's the women that are raising them to be thug. Why? Because they raise them to be emotional like they are, and that's essentially what a thug is, an emotional man. Okay? So there's no evidence to back up what Dr. Umar Johnson is saying. Okay, the numbers just don't support that. We look at the stats. First and foremost, a lot of people bring up that CDC argument that black men are the most involved fathers. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not accepting that study until I know exactly how they come to the conclusion, because I need to know the why. How do you come to your conclusion? So, if I figure that out, I'll do my research on that. And if it's satisfactory to me, then I'll accept that. But I don't believe any study from the left. I'm a firm believer in beware of Greeks bearing gifts and beware of leftists bearing studies, because they can make numbers to say whatever it is that they want. But the fact is, boys raised by their fathers or raised with their fathers are least likely to go to jail, least likely to be suspended from school, least likely to have behavior problems, least likely to commit a crime, least likely to be in gangs, and so on and so forth. So how do you say that men are at fault then? Again, this is an issue of basically females' choices. Females need to be held accountable to the men who they choose to have children with, who they choose to open their legs for. You got all these good men, and they keep opening their legs up for the thugs. And we also know the study that information that a small percentage of black men are producing children with a lot of women. Something like roughly about 20% of black men are responsible for like 60 to 70%, like 70% of the children or something like that. That means you have a small percentage of Pookies and Ray Rays that these women are choosing to make the bad decision to be with. Again, not good, decent black men's fault. You need to hold the right people accountable. Holding the wrong people accountable for something is not going to make the problem better. It's not going to make the situation better.
They out there killing themselves right now. What we doing about it? Unemployed black males, what we doing about it? Pants sagging, weed smoking, what we doing about it? The men are the providers. What have we been providing for our community? I'm not speaking you individually.
Yes.
Because you may be a damn good father. You may be a damn good father. You may be a damn good father, but guess what? What are we doing for the community? What are we doing for the children who don't have a father?
And again, here he goes with this groupthink nonsense, this community groupthink. There is no community groupthink. Okay, there is no Borg society. Society has never been about a group collective mindset. Society has always been built around individual people playing their parts in society, and that right there builds a society. So I don't know where he keeps coming with this conscious, collective conscious foolishness from. But he asked the question, why don't these children have fathers? Well, we keep saying the same thing, or we keep giving you the answer, because they keep choosing to be with the dudes who we know is not going to stick around. Why you keep choosing the same dude? Okay, if they don't, what? I go back to the Bible. Now he keeps saying that these men need to be out here in these streets and getting to these boys. Well, I tell them the truth. Tell them the truth. You want to know what we are doing for the black community, black conservative men, the red pill community? They telling the truth. They're offering the truth to people. And the Bible says you bring the truth to people, give it a message. They don't want to accept it, kick the dust off your heels, they will bring the message to somebody else. Nowhere in the Bible does it say to beat your head over the wall trying to get somebody to accept the truth that you're handing to them. So what am I doing for the community? I'm telling them the truth. I'm telling the truth, and I'm pointing at the real problem. I am not looking at the the repercussion. And this is what they want men to do. The problem is that we have too many women making the bad choices. I don't know why he keeps wanting to blame men for this. I mean, all these good men out here who don't have any children, how they're at fault for women choosing to lay down with these thugs? You know, if you don't want to listen to men and the advice that men are giving, you know, as so many people are saying, I can't protect you if I can't correct you. If you want to be protected, you have to be corrected. And a lot of these black females just don't want to be corrected. So what are you supposed to do? You can't do anything to somebody that just simply don't want to listen. They don't want to listen. You can't. If they want to go out here and be whores and whore it up and thot it up, what are you supposed to do? You can't do anything. So once again, this ridiculous notion of blaming men for everything is just stupid, when the evidence clearly shows where the problem lies.
You think she would be like that? That personality has a history.
If she's picking Pookie and Ray Ray instead of
you're making her a scapegoat.
No, she's picking a scapegoat.
No.
There's good quality men that they ignore.
Why she even got it? Why is there even a Pookie in the selection?
You gotta ask her that.
No. I'm gonna tell you why there's a Pookie in the selection.
What?
Because black men have abandoned black boys and have allowed social media, white media, athletes, and rappers to raise them. That's why she with Pookie. If we
Okay, first off, Pookies and Ray Rays have always existed in society. It's not like they're a product of the last 50 years or something like that. Pookies and Ray Rays have existed in society and have been in every culture, every group since human beings have been on the planet. They've always been a rogue element of people who's gonna do bad. And the Bible tells us that the poor will always be here with us. They will. And just like the poor will always be here with us, well, the degenerate will always be here with us. So Pookies and Ray Rays have always existed. Now, I will say this, that we have more Pookies and Ray Rays at a higher rate today than we had, let's say, 50, 60 years ago. So the real question is not who created the Pookies and Ray Rays and thugs. The question is, who's responsible for the reason why we have a higher rate of Pookies and Ray Rays? And the answer to that question is, it's the women. Women are responsible for it. They are raising these boys to be Pookies and Ray Rays. Now you ask, well, where the fault is at then? You mean where the Pookies and Ray Rays that they choose to lay down and have children with? I guess out having more babies by other women, doing what Pookies and Ray Rays do, what we knew that they already were going to do. But anyway, so how are women responsible for the increase in thugs amongst black people? Because I'm a firm believer in a why. Essentially, how do we go from having one of the highest marriage success rates to what we have today? Well, it goes back to, it's two things. It was first and foremost the Great Society. I talk about the Great Society all the time. The Great Society was the real major downfall of the black community. The black family. The black family survived the most harshest segregation, Jim Crow, racism that you can imagine, and the black family was strong and intact. The black community was intact because the black family stayed intact. But the Great Society was a neutron bomb to the black community. Of course, with a little bit of third wave feminism added to that. Now, third wave feminism basically eroded shame. It said that women were gonna be, I'm woman, hear me roar, they're burning their bras, they want to be open, free sex, free love. So essentially all of the mechanisms in the society, the shame that kept women in check, essentially was irrelevant. Well, I wouldn't say it completely went away, but it was absolutely watered down and no longer kept the women in check. So now all these females who are always attracted to the bad boys, they were always attracted to the dudes hanging on the corner with the swag, just that the society steered shamed them away from doing that. Plus we also had the evidence of what happens with women who mess with those dudes, and well, they end up being single mothers with a bunch of kids. And back then, you know, you're talking about, that was shameful. A woman getting pregnant without being married was an absolute shame. It's not shameful today. Now we celebrate it, but because of third wave feminism, all of these black females now not being constrained by the elders and the shame of society went around and messed with these dudes. And what was the repercussion? Well, what we knew, they were going to be left with, as single mothers with children. And these women, now that they have these children, then here comes the Great Society. The Great Society was the fallback for women. Okay, these women, because they no longer could depend upon provisions of good men out here laying up having sex with Pookie and Ray Ray, they had to depend upon the government. The government gave them free food, free housing, free everything. They no longer have any responsibility, which is a terrible thing. They're not for people to be able to live and not be able to eat, according to the Bible. So now these women, you give them all the responsibility. You give them all the rights and authority with no responsibility. They have free this, free everything. They don't have to be responsible for anything, and that's a bad combination. This is the origin of the ghetto mentality, the hoods. I talk about the ghetto mentality all the time. It's a mentality, it's a childlike mentality that put heavy emphasis on quick gratification, satisfying my desires today. Very little emphasis on delaying gratification so that I can have better and more in the future. It's all about living for here and now. And that was born in the hoods. You got all these single mothers clustered in these housing projects, raising these children, raising these boys to be emotional like them. And this is where we got the thugs and the extra Pookies and Ray Rays. You can't blame men for that. You cannot blame men for that. This is the responsibility of women. They chose wrong because they had the option to do so. Now, Dr. Umar Johnson says that men created the problem. Again, provide me the evidence. He never provided any evidence other than, well, men are supposed to be the responsible. Well, in order for men to be the leaders, people have to fall in. And you can't put a gun to somebody's head and force them to allow you to lead them. So if you don't want to be led by me, as I said, if you don't want my protection, you better be allowed to be corrected. And that's again, these women they want the protection, but they don't want to be corrected. This is the source of all the problems in the black community today. It falls solely at the feet of women. Men, we're not out here laying on and having all these children by all these different women. You can't blame them. That's BS.
And it's holding other men accountable for the same thing that you're talking about right now.
What are we doing for the young brothers in the street? So
what you mean, mentoring them? Now, I mean, he's a great father.
Mm-hmm. I ain't talking about that's individual. That's good, but that's individualism. Yeah. What are we doing collectively as men to change the trajectory for black boys in the streets right now?
Look, I'm not against the concept of mentoring. You know, I have no issue with the mentoring process, this whole thing about men mentoring boys in the community. But here's the problem with that is if you have a problem, if you have a serious issue, you cannot deal with the problem at the repercussion level. You have to go to the source. You have to go to the source of the problem, and that source is the women. Okay? We have to deal with the women. The children are just a byproduct of bad decisions. So dealing with the children is not going to solve the problem. All it's going to do is just cover the problem up. And again, I had to bring up another analogy, but this is the water spilling on the floor analogy. I mean, if somebody set out to wash their dishes and you put the stop in the drain to stop the water from draining out, and you turn the faucet on to fill the sink up, and you get distracted by something. Before you know it, the water has reached the top of the sink and it's spilling onto the floor. Well, what do? Well, obviously, the first thing you do is you turn the faucet off to stop the faucet from putting more water in the sink to spill over into the floor. Then you remove the stopper. Again, when you put your hands in that water, your hand is going to displace water, and some more water is going to fall on the floor. However, you can address that later. You remove the stopper to let the water drain. Then you proceed to clean the water on the floor, clean up the water on the floor. Now, wouldn't it be asinine? Wouldn't it be absolute insanity for me to immediately start dealing with the water on the floor, and I'm rushing and running around like a chicken with his head cut off, trying to clean up all the water on the floor, while the water just keeps spilling all over the floor? Well, that's what you expect men to do this, black men to do this. This is exactly what we would do if we resort to mentoring the children. You want me as a black man, a good, decent black man out here, not leaving children all over the place, okay? Raising children of my own, and you wanted me to take my time, my energy, and my resources to mentor these children who most of them I'm probably not going to reach. Okay, let's say you reach some of them, great. But as soon as you reach those children, now you got the next group of children. That these same women who you don't want to hold them accountable, these same women laying up with the Pookies and Ray Rays, producing more kids. Now, 3 years, 4 years later, I got the next group of kids that I got to try to deal with. No, you deal with the problem at the source. We have to address these women and address these women for making this bad behavior. Once we address the women, then we can deal with the children. Now, if Dr. Umar Johnson really cared about the black community, if he really and truly cared about the black community, he would be pushing for to stop the race hustling, stop the race narrative, and he should be pushing for a more traditional society, because you cannot expect men to be traditional in a modern society. We have this modern society, and you blaming men because they're not moving traditional. That's stupid. And this is exactly why I refer to Dr. Umar Johnson as a dumbass with a doctorate, because he is. I mean, there was once upon a time when I first heard about him, I thought, okay, yeah, here's a black man that's trying to help the black community. Then after listening to him more, I realized, okay, I believe that he's sincere about wanting to help the black community. I just disagree with how he's getting there with the preaching victimhood and so on and so forth. But after further review, this dude is the very embodiment of jackassery. And how anybody listen to this fool and take him serious, the only way that you can take him serious is that you have to listen to him with emotion. You have to listen to him with those race-colored glasses that basically allows black people to hear and only see and hear race in order to take him serious. Any amount of logic, and you can easily destroy his arguments. I mean, you could take basically junior high level discernment will basically dismantle his whole narrative, his message, because it's just borderline, it's just asinine. And like I said, I just don't understand how anybody listen to this fool to sit here and hold black men accountable for something that's the fault of women. And all he's doing by trying to hold men accountable is simply exacerbating the problem. You're not holding women accountable, and they're just going to keep doing what they're doing. And as men, all these good men who had nothing to do with women's bad choices, you expected us to, put on the cape and come in and save the day? That's idiotic. Because at the end of the day, I only have a really true responsibility to my household, and if everybody took responsibility for themselves and their household, we wouldn't have any issues. So you need to get these women in control, and we need to place the blame where it needs to be placed, and at their foot. There's nothing going to be gained by blaming the wrong people. Again, I always say that, if Dr. Umar Johnson really truly wants to put the ultimate responsibility on men, is he willing to give men the ultimate authority? And if he's not willing to do that, if women are not willing to do that, then men don't bother. You want me to take responsibility, you better give me the authority. No questions asked. But anyway, y'all, that's my 2 cents on this whole black men at fault narrative. It's BS. And as always, y'all, until next time.